in the house. I'm excited to have Makayla Sargent here with me. She is a two-time USA national team member, World University Games gold medalist in the 400, top 8 finisher at the Open Water Nationals. She is a member of the 2019 championship team with NC State. Do I need to go on here? I mean, this is quite a resume. We're just going to keep rolling. We also have 3-time NCAA All-Americans. Really, honestly, man, that's impressive. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
It's my pleasure, man. It's my pleasure. In addition, Makayla has a show. She is starting out. She's got a podcast she just kind of got rolling with, and we're going to plug the heck out of that, and we'll put the links up, and she'll tell us a little bit about that as we get rolling here. But I did want to start with kind of your college swimming career. Let's go back, I guess, prior to college. Let's go into high school, or let's go even prior back. When did you start swimming? Like everybody else, when they were like 5 and somebody threw them in a pool?
Yeah, pretty much. Actually, even younger than that. My mom was a swimmer in high school, so me and my sisters all were thrown into the pool at a very young age. I think we were doing swim lessons before we were like a year old. And then we just kind of had a natural feel for the water. And when we were about 5 or 6 years old, we joined the local YMCA swim team and kind of just went from there.
Was it a natural thing for you? I know there's a lot of parents, myself included, who love a sport and maybe they played it or have a passion for it, and then they just kind of fingers crossed that their kids are going to love it too, right? And they throw them into that sport. And I think most of the time it works out, but there's some times where, I think maybe the parents push a little too hard for that sport. Were you a natural, or, did your mom kind of push you, or how did that go?
There's a little bit of both. When I was younger, my parents definitely wanted us to be well-rounded in athletics. So we did a ton of different sports. I did softball, diving, gymnastics, basketball, Irish dancing, like a lot of different sports. But swimming was always the one that I came
during the week. That schedule was booked.
Oh yeah. School and sports. That was my entire childhood. But I loved it. And I always came back to swimming though. And swimming was definitely where I had the most potential and the most success at a young age, for sure.
Tell me, going through then, people hear about travel baseball, travel hockey, all these different avenues for people to exceed in certain sports, even softball, right? Which has become such a big, women's sport. Now they have the new league that they're starting, and I'm so excited for that. I'm trying to get as involved as I can with that. I already sent them a message, and it's just so cool now to have, something like that for women softball players after they go to college. I think it's the coolest thing in the world.
There actually is a swimming league. No one's just ever heard of it. Okay. So it started in 2019. It's called the ISL, the International Swimming League. And it is no longer going on because of some political things that are going on in the world.
I guess there was a swimming league.
Yes, there was a swimming league, but there is hope that it will come back, but we don't know yet. But I had the opportunity to be a part of the second season of the ISL.
Really?
So yeah, so in 2020, I got to travel to Budapest, Hungary, and I stayed there for 6 weeks, along with 10 other teams throughout the country, or not even the country, throughout the world. So there the Tokyo Frogs, London Roar. I was on Team Grant. It was really cool. There was a
hold on, what was your team name?
LA Current.
You were the LA Current. Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys were based in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So the cool thing about it was that you didn't have to up and move to train to be a part of a certain team. You were drafted to that team, and then you traveled with them. So you met up with them at wherever the location of the competition was. So in the first season, the format was a little bit different in 2019, where you would meet up with your team, you would travel to a country, you would stay there for a week or two and train, and then you would have a competition against 3 other teams. But in 2020, it was COVID. So the format was a little bit different because they still wanted it to happen. It was only the second season, and they're like, if there's any chance of this thing becoming big, we have to push through and we have to keep going. So in 2020, we were all put on in this hotel in an island in the middle of Buda and the Pest side. Okay. And there was 10 teams with hundreds of athletes from all over the world.
So all the competitors were all stayed up in the same hotel.
Yep, all of the swimmers were in. There was actually 2 hotels that were connected by a tunnel. It kind of sounds like some weird movie.
Good thing it wasn't hockey, because there'd be fights with everybody the whole time, man, right?
Yeah. It was a little bit more relaxed than that. We played some board games, some card games, and we were limited to where we could travel. So the entire island that we were on only took about maybe an hour to walk around. And we had to like sign out on this like big easel of like when we were leaving and when we were coming back. We had to get tested every 2 days when we were there for 6.5 weeks with the not fun COVID tests. And we were really only allowed to be on the island and at the pool because of everything that was going on. But I did get to have that experience
Yeah.
and compete against some of the top level athletes in the world. And while I was there, the two coaches on LA Current were David Marsh and Jack Roach, and they're two former US Olympic team coaches. So I learned a lot from that experience, even though I didn't really get to explore Budapest that much.
Well, that is so rad, and I'm glad that I asked that because I honestly had no clue, and that just worked out real well. I guess so. After 2020, did the league dissolve then, or did it keep going and then fell apart? Like,
It,
what's the
it
trajectory?
went on for another year. So in 2021, they had another season, and it went back to the regular format where they went to Italy.
Did you choose to not compete that year, or was it another draft, or like how did?
So there was another draft, and I did end up getting drafted, but this was kind of like when I was in the limbo of am I going to continue swimming or not?
Yeah, all right.
As I was prepared for the 2020 Olympic trials, which happens in June. And then when that got canceled, I continued swimming, and the ISL was in, I think, September, August or September of that year in 2020. So the ISL is the reason why I continued swimming through 2020 with the hopes that I would continue through 2021 and compete the following year at Olympic trials because it had been postponed a year due to COVID. But unfortunately, when I came back from ISL in November of 2020, there was limited places to train. And New York was pretty shut down still. So I wasn't really able to train. I was finding like lakes, yard pools, anywhere to just
Really?
stay in the water. And then with
Wait,
the holidays and everything too, it was just very chaotic.
I love watching swimming in the Olympics, and I'm not a big swimmer. I've never been real, like it's not a passion to me or anything like that, right? But I can certainly tell you that when it's on in the Olympics, I definitely tune in. I always know who the swimmers are. I know the names that year. It's like when the World Cup of Soccer or something's around. Like you get all hyped up about it. And I think if there was a league or something like that, that I would watch it. And I'll tell you what, like it's always going to be a big thing because there's gamblers and people are going to bet on stuff, right? So, there's that
Mhm.
aspect of it as well. But I think it was bad timing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if they had done it a few years before or a few years after, it still would have been a thing because, like you said, I feel like swimming is one of the most watched sports in the Olympics, but that's only every 4 years. So the league, the idea behind it was to give those swimmers more opportunities, like you said, after college to continue swimming and make a living off of their sport. And there were some people who made decent money while they were there. The prize money was like if you won an event, you won an X amount of money. If you broke like a record, you won an X amount of money. And then there was 4 teams in each competition. So if you won the competition, your whole team got a certain amount of money. So there was individual prize and team prize money as well. And it went to like semifinals and finals.
Okay. So all in all, you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a really, really incredible experience.
A great experience, and you don't regret any. I mean, would you? Well, I guess I don't know what stage of your career you're at anymore with swimming, but if you got the call again and they said, "Hey, Makayla, we want to draft you," what would you say?
That's a pretty sensitive question for me, to be honest, because I was in that position in 2021. I unofficially retired in January of 2021. Olympic trials was in June of that year. And I have kept going back and forth with like, do I just push through and, maybe something will come up? Because in 2020, I was ready to go. Like March of 2020, right before the NCAAs got canceled, I was convinced I was going to make the Olympic team. Like I was really ready. And then once, everything started to fizzle out, I lost that confidence and the opportunity to train in general. So physically, I wasn't prepared either. In the end, I decided that I didn't want to go to Olympic trials if I wasn't 100% ready, because then I would have just been playing the what if game the rest of my life. If I had gone there and gotten third place and missed the Olympic team by one spot, playing the like, what could I have done? And I thought that that was the best choice for me, but now looking back, I'm like, well, I have no idea what I would have done because I didn't even go. So at first, it was a very hard decision. And I still, think back and play the what if game every once in a while because leaving a sport that was your entire identity and what you sacrificed your entire life for, kind of not on your own terms because of COVID, was really challenging. And then that summer, after the Olympic trials had passed, I got the call for the ISL, and they're like, we know you haven't been swimming for 5-6 months, but we would love to have you on the team. Like, you have a few months to get back in shape if you want to join. And the first competition was in Italy, and I was like, how could I not take that opportunity? But I just mentally was not in a state to keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth because it was just really, really tough on my body and on my mind.
And I can tell, almost by your tone when we were talking pre-interview, I said I'm really good at reading people, and I was super lighthearted with it, but I almost seem to have struck a chord, right? And I can almost sense with you how passionate you were. And as soon as there was that question of Olympics or would you get that call, there was a shift right away. I could see it in your voice. I could see it. I mean, you almost wanted to burst out into tears, and I was like, oh my God, what did I do? But I could
No, no,
sense it.
no.
Am I right? Like, I could sense
Yeah, you're
it.
100% right.
Right. And I could see it right away. It's one of those things you're not alone with. And a lot of these pro athletes I talked to that may have retired too early, in any sport they were playing, there's kind of and not to get religious or anything with it, man, but there's like a higher power. There's like this is kind of meant to be, there's a fate element to it. It's why we're all doing what we do every single day. You know what I mean? And to look back and live with regret with it, Makayla, it'd be kind of foolish. Like, you got to go on that island, right? You were on that island with 10 other teams. You were part of something I didn't even know about 10 minutes ago, with a professional league.
Mhm.
Maybe that stuff doesn't happen, right? If you do, and maybe you don't make the Olympic, you know what I mean? So, like, there's always those what ifs and battling with it. And I think that's just gonna chew you up. Like, those demons will just chew you up. You need to just, I'm done. Like, and just be done
Yeah.
with it and just clear that out of your head. That's my words of wisdom from
Thank you. I appreciate it.
money
And
today.
that's also, I don't know if you mind me kind of go segueing into
No, go. I want
my
you to. Yeah,
podcast,
yeah,
the
that's
things that
that's
I'm
why we're
doing.
here. Yeah,
Yeah, so
we're getting
that's
to
kind
know
of
each
why
other.
I started my program as well, because I know I'm 5 years out from retirement and I'm still dealing with these things that come up every once in a while. And I've navigated it and I've learned and reflected. And, I'm able to have these conversations with people like you openly and be vulnerable about it because I did the work and I was able to reflect. And it took me probably 4 years to get to that spot. And I still have bad days. And so that's kind of the idea
So
behind.
it was a real big deal then. It was almost like traumatizing then.
Yeah, it really was because I sacrificed like my entire childhood. Like, my family was revolved around that, like dinner conversations were revolved around that. And I grew up in a small town, so there wasn't a lot of swimming opportunity. And so I actually lived with a host family in high school in order to train. So I wasn't even living with my family because I needed to train at a more consistent and higher level. And where I lived didn't offer that. So I sacrificed a lot, and then to, not have that final swim or know what the outcome would have been was really challenging. And like you said, I've learned that living with regret does eat you alive, and that's not productive in any way. So I started this program because I see all these other athletes that are out there in various different sports, and they're going through the same thing. And there's really no tools or anything out there to teach you how to navigate transitioning out of the sport. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it was really life changing for me. And I had to understand that, you can't live with regret and guilt. You can only focus on what you can control. And like you said, I'm a firm believer that everything does happen for a reason. And I'm here talking with you. I have all these other opportunities that have come about because of the decisions that I made in my swimming career.
So listen, I respect the heck out of that. And hearing you say all of that really, like, it transcends with me in a way too. And I don't know if you've had the opportunity to go back and watch, a lot of these Moneyball episodes, but it's kind of crazy because there's kind of a common denominator, right? Like, with some of my athletes, especially the retired ones, where it does lead into that. There's a lot that goes into that. And even if they're not retired yet, there's a lot that goes into the pressures of being a pro athlete. There's so much that's put on you to go perform, and you feel like you need to be a certain way and you need to be an image for people. And like, so I think sometimes it's overlooked, especially collegiately. Swimming is a big deal. There's a lot of other sports beyond those major four, that there's a lot of kids that are passionate about that craft and that's what they do. And maybe people don't see the ins and outs. What is the name of your program that you have now? And both the podcast and then is it a separate like dive into that a little bit. Let's go there. I want to hear all about it because this is one of the rare interviews I've done where I wish I would have done a tiny bit of research before because I didn't know that you had gone through all that. And I almost feel like shame on me for not knowing that. You know what I'm saying? Because you really had a lot to deal with that. So I do apologize. And I think that full steam ahead, right? Like you're going to crush it moving forward. But let's talk about that program.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, like I love the approach that you take to this podcast because it offers a more genuine conversation, right? If you're doing all this research, you're going to have a scripted conversation and you're not going to get to these deeper level conversations. And
Thanks.
don't feel bad.
I really do appreciate that. That's a huge compliment. You know, it really is. And I've made a lot of good friends where they're like, text me after and be like, man, that was so fun. You know what I mean? So, but thank you. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go into your stuff.
And that's a lot of the things that you're talking about with your podcast is a lot of the same principles that I want to hopefully carry into mine because, you know, this is a vulnerable topic and my goal is to give athletes a platform to share their stories. It's very fresh and new. I just started it about a month ago, but this idea has been brewing in my head for probably 4 years. Really, when I first retired, I was journaling a lot. And one day I was just like, this can't just sit in my computer in my notebook. Like it needs to be out there. And I was like, whether that's a book, a podcast, or a program, like I need to do something. And finally, a month ago, I had the courage to just kind of send it because I was waiting to try to like perfect it before I put it out there in the world. But then I was like, well, you know, what could I have done in the last 4 years if I had started it sooner? So I have an Instagram. It's called Athletes Rewired. And I also have a podcast on Spotify under the same name, Athletes Rewired. And kind of the reasoning behind the name is I believe that a lot of athletes are wired in a certain way to train, you know, to be perfect, to have these, to meet these certain expectations. And that's not even just in the performance realm, but like how you live your entire life. A lot of athletes are perfectionists, people pleasers because of the way that they had to structure their lives. So my philosophy and, you know, kind of using a little bit of my occupational therapy background is rewiring the mind and the body for optimal health after sports because we're not given any tools, we're not given any guidance. And when you are in your sport, you have trainers, you have psychologists, you have all of that easily accessible. So I just want to create a community for those athletes to be able to have that support, you know, and you know, kind of to retrain their brain and their body, whether that be nutrition, physical health, learning how to work out again without it needing an end goal. And I plan to hopefully expand it into other topics as well, you know, talking about financial literacy and understanding that when you leave your sport, you might not be able to maintain that same lifestyle that you had if you don't have those big paychecks coming in. So I have a lot of big plans.
I'm going to TO you because it's amazing you just touched on that. When I first started this show, Marlon Kerner, who shout out Marlon, he's a good friend of mine and he played with the Bills for a while. And one of the things he wanted to do when he retired was exactly that. The first thing you do now when you get drafted in the NFL, one of the first things you do after you sign your massive contract is they sign you up for a financial independence course. And they say, listen, now here come all these mooches and leeches and friends that you knew in high school prior to, and a family member you never even knew you had, looking for the handout. And how many of these athletes end up broke? There's a thing, Makayla, like of all the homeless basketball players, guys that I watched 10 years ago, you know, that are homeless. And it's amazing. And again, that goes back to what I was saying with the fate and meeting up and whatever, because this is really cool. I had no idea prior to this interview any of this was going to be said, or that, you know, we may connect on that level with being able to help athletes. And I would love to be a part of it because what you're doing is massive.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's something I'm really passionate about. And like I said, I'm just getting started and I have a lot of really big plans for this. So I appreciate your support. And I have an Instagram under that name as well. I think it's athletes_rewired. And then I also have a personal Instagram too that I post on as well with these types of topics. And that's Makayla_N_Sargent.
I guess how do you plan to, for lack of a better word, recruit, you know, people to come on the show that want to talk about this, that will open up about it?
Yeah, so I've started with the people I know and the people I'm comfortable with because I feel like that's the best way to get started. Um,
Of course.
and so I've been talking with, past roommates, past teammates. I've been reaching out to other athletes that were at my college. So I started at the University of Florida and then actually transferred to NC State. Have some friends that were in different sports as well, like gymnasts, soccer players, and such, some wrestlers from NC State. And also, I do swim clinics throughout the country, and I often do them with other swimmers that are retired now, and that's kind of what that they do as a side gig. So we get talking, and I bring it up, and I'm like, "Hey, if you want to share your story, I'd love to have you on." So just using a lot of the mutual connections that I have, and also learning to like not be scared and reach out to
Just
people.
just gonna say to you, the biggest thing is gonna be to reach out to them and don't be afraid of them saying no or not hearing back from them. That's the number one thing I'll say. You can't be afraid to ask. And I've been shocked with, some of the huge names I've been able to reel in just from being honest, just from being
Mhm.
completely transparent and honest. Let's do a couple fun questions. All right. We're being too serious
Okay.
here. We're being way. Let's talk about the cannonball. Okay. The old cannonball in the pool. I think there should be part of this, whenever we do a swimming league or whatever we do, right? There needs to be some kind of cannonball competition or something. Or can we integrate that into, even into the Olympics? Like, I mean, the cannonball is a staple, right?
Yeah.
All right. This is my question. How do we integrate the cannonball into the Olympics? That's my question to you.
Oh gosh, I think you would probably have to go to the divers first, because I feel like the best cannonball is going to be from higher up, right? And I don't know a lot of swimmers that are going to want to go off of like a 5 meter, 7 meter platform. But
How
I think
high
you
is
might have
that? How high is
divers.
that super high one? That's it. Like the highest dive board. How high is that thing?
10 meters.
Okay. How many feet for idiots like me?
Oh god, you're putting me on the spot. I'm going to look like an idiot.
It looks super high.
Yeah.
All right. So now we go put like Dion Dawkins, right? Shout out Dion, man. We'll put somebody like that on there and have him cannonball in. That's going to be
I
ratings.
guess.
That's going to be
Oh
ratings,
yeah.
right?
You
And then
have
you
to make
have
sure he
like,
has correct form though, because that could really hurt if you're
oh,
not landing the correct way.
especially guys maybe a little bit
Oh
more.
yeah.
Yeah, that might go if you so, but then we could even make it like we could make a show out of this. You could do it like prime time, right? We call it cannonball, and we have all these athletes from everywhere. They do cannonballs, and people rate them and give them 1 to 10s. And am I onto something here, or is it just me that
That
like
would be pretty entertaining. Yeah.
we're onto something there? What's your favorite ice cream?
Peanut butter.
Just peanut butter?
Peanut butter ice cream.
Is it like vanilla with peanut butter in it, or just peanut butter ice cream?
Just peanut butter ice cream. Sometimes I'll make like a peanut butter smoothie or a banana peanut butter smoothie. I'll freeze some bananas and then put a lot of peanut butter in there. And then it kind of makes like a little soft serve ice cream.
You're like me, and we think that peanut butter is way healthier than it is because, right? Because you're like, oh, look at all the protein in it. Like peanut
Oh,
butter
yeah.
is horrible for you, but it's better than a lot of other of the horrible things. Right?
Uh,
I think too, when you have a little bit more intimate of a sport like swimming or gymnastics or whatever, your bonds are probably that much better. Is that fair to say?
mhm. Yeah, for sure. And you spend a lot of time together, like 2 hour practices in the morning, an hour lift. A lot of your classes and stuff are together, and then 2 more hours like at night. You live together. So everything is
Yeah,
very much together in
I
the
could
world.
see that. I could see a lot of relationships actually forming, and like there's probably that too in the swimming world.
Yeah,
It's so unique to other sports. But
absolutely.
this was really cool. It was nice getting to know you. Thanks for taking the time with me. We'll keep in touch. I do want to get you in contact with a bunch of people because
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think it's something that's going to take off, and I'm going to be here to support you the whole time. So it's really cool. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for
Got it.
having me.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. See ya.